Well, if anybody who is here joined in because of all of the good bird stories, I am sorry. I know nothing about birds, and all I know about birds is entirely in Dutch, so I don't even know what they're called in English. This is actually a really interesting thing that I realized. Speaking English is I can speak English like this, but I can't tell you what any food or bird is. Hi there.
Hello, hi Rami. It's been a year since we did a call actually.
Yep.
Hello, I'm back. A bit of a introducing myself. As Luigi 452. I was actually here last year for answering some applying for the QA testings and etc. I
Hmm.
do have like different questions this year.
Absolutely.
Well, first of all, again, thank you so much for doing answering my call last year and then answering my questions. Those really helped me out, and it gave me
Glad
a
to
lot
hear
of
that.
insights too. Um, yeah, I can't believe it's literally been a year since that happened, and
Yeah.
should have used my Twitter a lot more often, but I'm more busy on the Nuclear Film Discord for like all general purposes as well as the modding scenes over there, so
Hmm.
I can't help that. But I try to use the Twitter myself to, post some random things or like post like the mod progress.
Yeah.
But yeah, one of the main questions that I have is there is actually a local game jam that's happening in 2 days ago, 2 days later.
Hmm.
Unfortunately, I can't make that because I have some like other job interviews that I need to attend, which is more important. That being said, I did have quite a bit of interest in terms of attending it and participating in the game jam, and I have no experiences and ideas on what's gonna be happening over there besides making games. So I was wondering if you have any some sort of recommendations and then share some of your past experiences on the game jam.
Yeah, game jams are honestly they're mostly creative exercises. A lot of people think of them as like contests, and some people do treat them as a contest, but in general, it's just a place to make stuff without too many consequences. And I think that's why most people jam. Most people just jam because they just want to make a thing and like keep those creative muscles sort of going. So
Uh-huh.
there's usually they're pretty low expectations beyond make what you wanna. Um, Most game jams are set up in sort of the sort of a very specific rhythm. Usually there's the pre jam sort of like talks, food, lunch, maybe. Sometimes people make teams at that point. So before the theme gets revealed, usually they make teams after the theme gets revealed, and then usually there's a game theme, a game jam theme. So there'll be like a word or a image or a thing that is the theme that you can work around. Like it's very rare that at a game jam you're required to make a game according to the theme. Usually, it's more of a
Mm.
recommendation, and even if it is required, you can just say, "Eh, not doing that." Or if the theme is like birds, you can just make a game and then add a bird to it and just be like, "There's a bird."
Bird
Uh,
story, the game.
Yeah, exactly. But the themes are usually sort of like good game jam themes tend to like walk that line of like concrete and abstract. So like one of my favorite themes to ever work on was like extinction, which is both a mechanically interesting thing, but also a theme like a narrative theme. But it can also be like sort of a feeling or an aesthetic, and like so it's not like one thing. It can be many things, and I think most game jam themes sort of like immediately give you three or four ideas to work with.
Mm.
And then after that, the game jam starts. So if you have a team, you and your team sit down and usually um, wow, it's getting time. Brainstorm for a little, and then you come up with an idea, and then you kind of make that. And then most teams like super overscope. So by the end of the first day, you usually have like a little panic of like, oh my god, this is way too much. And then you scale down, and then end of day 2, you finish that.
Hmm.
Um,
Okay.
and then that's it. You sometimes there's like a award ceremony and like a judging thing. Sometimes there's not. Sometimes there's prizes. Sometimes there's not. So it's really it kind of depends on the game jam. But generally, the feel that a game jam gives you is just like a fun time to make something silly. And if it's cool, then awesome. And if not, then whatever. It was just 2 days of work.
Yeah, I can see that happening. I do have the website that is describing on what will be going over the game jam for this local one. I can post a link on the chat so you can
Yeah,
take a
go
look
for
at
it
it.
for sure.
Um, what you described in terms of like the process as well as the, the general like what the themes are going to be like, yeah, it's over there. And I believe by looking at the schedules of it, it does go over on this year's themes for the this year's game jam will be this or that. So yeah, I feel like for this kind of game jam that I have it on a local, it seems like we have to follow it.
Yeah, I mean,
Um,
again, there'll be a theme, right? There's
mm,
always a theme, but it usually the theme is very loose. Like it's very off. It's very rare that they're really like you have to. If I'm reading this sounds like a very typical game jam. It seems very loose. Anyone is welcome, regardless of experience. It's completely up to you whether you would like to work with or without a team. You don't need experience at all. It's meant to be as a fun event. Like it sounds like they're very open about how you want to make a game. So if they have a theme, it'll be a recommendation and not a requirement.
I see.
Yeah, it sounds like you're allowed to stay over and sleep at the event if you want to do that. Do that. You don't have to. Do get some sleep. It's usually good to make sure you get some sleep. And
Oh yeah.
yeah, don't that what to bring list. Really good idea. Bring all of the stuff they mentioned that you need. Some cash for snacks. An extension cord is a good idea. Some clothes, hygiene products, really good idea, and something
Well,
to sleep on. All of that stuff like really
well,
helps.
I have all those except a laptop of myself, so
Yeah.
I guess I have to looks like I have to invest some like 800 or 1 grand for it.
Or
Dang it.
alternatively, email the event and see if they have one for you. Sometimes they have loans,
Hmm.
and they might have that.
Interesting. I mean, also at the game jam, I think the game engine is your own choice,
Yep,
right?
you can do whatever you want. So sometimes there's engine jams like a Unity jam or an Unreal jam or a Game Maker jam, but usually jams or Pico 8 jam, but usually jams are just make whatever you want in whatever you want.
Huh.
Yeah, they're super fun. I mean, I can answer your questions, but honestly, I think the best way to get a feel of what a jam is to just go to one. And
Yeah.
even if you can't go to all of it, you know, it maybe they're okay with maybe you can email them and just say like, hey, I've never been to a jam. I'd love to come, but I have some responsibilities. Is it okay if I just drop in at some point and
Yeah.
just hang out?
Yeah,
Um,
I mean, actually, that sounds like a very good idea. So I can take a look at it and then just
yeah,
feel on what they do, how the event's going, and watch some of the process of how the
yeah.
game jams are going, as well as how they are doing in terms of the making games and such. Yeah, that's actually a
Yeah,
good idea.
and maybe if it works, if you're around, you can check if there's a team that still needs your help. Who knows?
Yeah, never hurt to ask anything, right?
Nope.
Yeah, exactly. All right. That's one question. The last, second, and probably the last question that I have is, again, I've been definitely as a long-term goal will be the game developer slash programmer. That being said, is it really worth going into the schools for those kind of, courses? Because, you know, tuition fees nowadays are just really high, and some of them are just way too demanding in terms of fees or just course loads. Isn't I understand that the having a degree is a great asset for applying for the companies, but isn't it usually just better to have some sort of your own project to show?
So they're not mutually exclusive. The way it works is if you have great projects and a degree, that'll make you more interesting than somebody who just has great projects. If you have a degree but no great projects, that'll make you less interesting than somebody who just has great projects. Like in the end, the games industry is a very practical place. If you're good at something and you can prove it, that'll work. But if you are good at something and there's somebody else who is also good at that same thing and they have a degree but you do not, they're probably going to go with that second person, right?
Mm,
Um, so it can't hurt to have a degree. It's not necessary, but it's also not useless. So there's a balance there. If you think if you don't work well in an environment in a school environment, then it's worth considering whether that's the right place to be, especially if there's a high economic cost to going to school. But there's also the economic cost of not going to school, right? Like,
that's true.
what if you end up not liking the games industry and you want a different job? Like, imagine instead of making video games, you decide you want to work as a programmer at IBM, as an architect at an architecture firm, as a I don't know what, like whatever. Not having a degree outside of the games industry will definitely hurt your chances of getting a job. So um, there are costs to going to school. There are costs to not going to school, and I don't ever feel comfortable saying what the better choice for you would be, because I just don't know your life. I don't know your situation.
Yeah, I
Um,
understand that.
in
So,
general, if somebody asks me that question, I recommend them to go to school. Because if you had a very good reason to not go to school, you wouldn't be asking me. You would be telling me, right? You would be telling
that's
me I'm not going to school. Um,
yeah.
so yeah, no, just find a course that sounds interesting to you where it helps you with your game development, but also if you don't end up going into game development, there's jobs there as well. One of my favorite schools in the world is this school called the Wits University down in Johannesburg, South Africa, and they have a game development course. And South Africa is obviously a very different place from the U.S. Um, and they have some pretty and Europe, mostly a very different place than Europe, I guess. They have some pretty severe poverty there and some pretty severe racial issues. Um, in that regard, it's not that different from the U.S., I guess. But um, what's what's interesting is that school very specifically is a school that teaches you skills that are useful outside of the games industry as well. Like if there's
Oh,
a skill that is just interesting for the games industry, they don't teach you that because they want to make sure that if a student goes to school, they don't end up in poverty because if they end up in poverty, they will probably die. Right.
right,
So as a
right.
school, they take responsibility for that, and
Well,
um, and in that regard, like it's actually I would actually recommend going to school always, and I would recommend if you go to school to find something that is interesting in the games industry, but not necessarily the games industry. So
yeah.
instead of doing what I did, which is go to school for game design, go to school for interaction design or for product design or electrical engineering or stuff like that.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I did back in like 2012. I attended a school for the web development, but it was too. By the time it was like a second last semester, that was when I realized that oh maybe the web developer isn't a good idea. But since I'm already like way deep into it, I might as well just see and go through,
Yeah.
which by the end of it just wasted me like a year and a half worth of time as well as a lot of money. So again, because of that reason, I'm just skeptical on going back to school. It's like, is
Yeah.
it really worth it going back to it or not?
If you
Right? So,
if you already have a degree and you're not sure, just go to one of the what do you call them? Open days, orientation
transfers, yeah.
days, whatever. Like,
Uh,
and just get a feel for what things are. Like, see if it sounds interesting, if they're talking at a level that you need. Like, a lot of schools will start very entry level.
mm,
So ask like about the second, third, fourth year like program. What is there? What do they teach? And then just check against your own skills. For a lot of people, especially if you already have a degree, for a lot of people that have been making games for a while, school actually ends up being sort of Yeah, limiting in that they have to follow very specific rules about how to educate people.
Mm,
The reason I recommend people to go to school is because a degree is worthwhile. And if you say I already have a degree, there it might be worth looking into different ways to learn game development. Open
yeah, I
house,
guess.
yes, that is
Yeah.
it.
I mean, I guess having a degree as well as having your own personal project by using the experiences that you've learned from the school will be a huge asset because, again, what you
It,
said, the grade project is okay, but it won't take you far enough, right?
a great project, honestly, a great project is the most valuable thing you can have. But the problem is that other people also have great projects, and if somebody has a great project and a degree, that is more interesting than somebody who just has a great project, right?
Right, that's
Like
true.
here's how companies hire in very simple ways. They get 100 applications, they filter them out in like a first run down to 10, and then those last 10 they're going to filter it down to 5, and those 5 they invite for an interview. So
Mm,
if there's 10 people with great projects and a degree, and you are a person with just a great project, they're going to filter out to 10, and you're not going to be part of those.
wow.
Um, but if there are 5 people with great projects and a degree, or 3 people with great projects and a degree, and you just have a great project, then they'll talk to you just as if you had a degree. Like it won't matter at that point. And if your project is that much better than everybody else, or they see a little bit of their company in it, then they might just not give us, they might not give a damn about what degree you have and just talk to you. Like there's no real way to tell. So whatever you have that will benefit you, whether it's production experience or former games or like a strong portfolio, a good attitude towards teamwork or communication, like whatever you have that will work for you is good to have, and the more you have, the better.
All right. Yeah, I will definitely think about it. It's again, schooling questionable, but definitely do see a huge potential on getting into the industries for sure.
If you have cool
Again,
projects, make a portfolio, start applying to companies, see what they say. Like, don't forget, if you apply to a company and you don't make it, they won't keep your name on file in the never hire this person list. They'll just
mm,
they'll just
toss,
remove. Yeah, they'll just
yeah,
not look
toss
at
it
it.
away.
So if you want to know how well your portfolio holds up, make your portfolio, make it the best you can, apply to 10 jobs, see what happens.
Right. All right. Yeah.
Yeah, why not? I mean, I do this thing where if I have a new game project, a new game idea, I'll make a pitch deck and go pitch it to publishers, even if I don't want a publisher, just to see what their responses are.
Hmm.
Because that way I learn what they're interested in and if they're excited about it and what feedback they have and what criticisms they have. And that's actually really useful to me. And sometimes if I really like a publisher, we might work with them. But usually I'm just looking for information. I'm kind of recommending you do the same. Just
Do a
make your
bit of
portfolio as
pitching.
good as, yeah, pitch yourself to 10 people who would normally look at pitches like that, because that's effectively what you're doing. You're pitching you. So
And do a bit of field research too.
yeah,
Huh.
do some test pitches.
Neat.
Cool, good luck.
All right, thank you so much. Again, thank you so much for answering my call once again and answering all these valuable and giving me valuable answers. I will definitely use them to my advantage. And this time, I will actually try to snip the conversation and then save it myself for future uses. Like the
Nice.
last time, I forgot to do it
Uh-huh.
at the last second. So, all right.
um and yeah, call back next time or next year or something, like keep me up to
Yeah,
date on how life is going.
yeah. Thank you so much. I'm gonna go back onto the modding now. Thank you so much
Awesome,
for your
have
time.
a good one. Bye.
Take care. Bye.
Okay, that was a fun call. Let's see.